good evening and welcome to another episode of Thought That Get Results. I'm Edward Weber Herbert, and as per usual, we're here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line, address it to the Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis. Or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. By the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question, a comment, you can perhaps get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that when you're getting on the show, you're well organized and you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem not within our broadcast standards. Also, you can join us, our video stream, our Facebook page, and also you can subscribe to us on YouTube so that you can follow the video link of this program. Thank you all again for joining us. Your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. Tonight, we've got two segments. International Men's Day is coming up. It's important that we talk about it. We highlight the events and the activities that the Department of Gender Affairs here in Nevis will be having to highlight that day. With us is Pastor Wayne Maynard of the Gender Affairs in the Ministry of Health and Gender Affairs in the Nevis Island Administration. Good evening, Pastor Wayne.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert.
And it is good to have you.
It's good to be here once again, Mr. Herbert.
Okay, we said Pastor Wayne, but you're here from the Department of Gender Affairs, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so why don't you, for the listening public who probably may not know, tell us a little bit about what you do at the department.
Well, Mr. Herbert, my role there involves really representing the Gender Affairs Department, especially as a male. I am the sole male there, but we work together in dealing with social issues. Obviously, the issue of gender is something that affects every aspect of society. Often there is a misperception that gender affairs only pertains to women, but we deal with issues that affect not only women but men as well. And as a male there, I think having a representative as a male gives credence to the fact that we deal with issues that affect both men and women in really all aspects of life. We engage in things that we see as social issues, whether they are pertaining to issues of youth, whether they're pertaining to issues of economic setbacks, or whether they're issues of family issues or social issues. We try to address things that we see as problems and really deal with them from that perspective. So we're really broad-based, I would say.
Okay, but it's interesting. Maybe we can comment on it a little later on. Maybe in the second segment of the show, we got the panel coming in. But an interesting notation that you made, you're the sole male there.
That is so true.
But I find that interesting, no?
Well, I guess maybe there is not a great appeal, and I guess we're trying to make changes as it relates to that. So I guess you have to start with 1 before you can get to 2 and 3. But there was a long period of time where there were no males, so I would say progress is being made.
And that's rather interesting. 1 male representing that in that department. Interesting. Well, probably comment on it a little later on. But nevertheless, I had mentioned at the top that our focus this evening is International Men's Day, correct?
That is true.
Okay, and the department no doubt have some plans for that?
Yes, Mr. Herbert. The International Men's Day is something that was started back in 1999 officially. It has been discussed prior as a day that was set aside to be able to highlight and celebrate the accomplishments of men. And so it is celebrated not just here in St. Kitts and Nevis, but really worldwide. And so it's something that we have done over the years, and we emphasize men and their contributions to the community and to the society, and we seek to foster better relationships among men and also between men and boys, and also the home and family and the society. We certainly believe that men play a very vital and significant role in the community, and particularly in the home, and oftentimes men's accomplishments are somewhat marginalized, and we want to be able to highlight those things and also inspire men as well to be able to accomplish greater things and to fulfill their roles adequately.
It used to be that women had some challenges that didn't, they needed, you know, extra quotas and so on and so forth. Now we're having issues with the men, especially the young men, right?
That is true. That is true. And I believe that this year I'm very much in favor of the theme that has been selected internationally, which is positive role models. And we've also added somewhat of a local flavor to that by adding a tag that says, "Together we can make a difference." And I firmly believe that our young men, sadly in large part or in many cases, going astray because of the absence of positive role models that can really guide them in the right direction.
Now, I think we might be able to get some perspective from you as to exactly what is going on. Because to tell the truth, we speculate a lot. We're not in an everyday situation as you are, perhaps collecting data and finding out how we're doing. I think just from, you know, stuff that happens around and so on, I think that we need a lot of help, especially with the young men. But maybe you can give us, from your perspective in the department and dealing with cases and so on and so forth, where are we at?
Well, Mr. Herbert, as I alluded to earlier, I firmly believe that there has been, in some ways, a relinquishing of the role of men, particularly in the home. As we emphasize on this term called role models, there is no better place and no greater place to be able to make an impact as it relates to being a role model than in the home. It is often said, and it's true, that home is where you are the real you. And when our young boys are growing up and they are missing out on the opportunity to really see a role model in the home, they're really missing out on a lot. And oftentimes, boys especially tend to turn to role models in sports or role models in the music industry, role models in other areas. That's not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, but I believe that in order to really be a positive role model that will have a lasting impact, this thing of role models has to be dealt with from a holistic approach.
Okay, I understand that may be your belief, it might be my belief, and so on. But do we have the hard evidence to show that, though? Because based on my knowledge, without scientific data, I don't know whether or not the makeup of the households in Nevis and St. Kitts and most of the other Caribbean islands have changed, because in my generation, the household is headed by a female as well. And we find that has been happening a lot. So I don't know if there has been a lot of changes as far as the hard evidence is concerned, because you're going to get that debate.
You make an interesting point. However, one of the things that we have to be cautious of and cognizant of is that things in society take a period of time to really mature or to really manifest themselves. And so while we may look back at our, for those of us who are older, and I don't necessarily consider myself old, but if we can look back, say, 20, 30 years, there are certain things that arguably would have been taking place in the society that are really bringing forth fruit. Now we fast forward maybe 2 or 3 decades later. And so it's not that everything was okay, but it's just that they're manifesting themselves in large part, and we're seeing the fruits of certain things that may not have necessarily been positive at the time.
So one of the recommendations that we are coming up with then is that we have household with 2 parents?
Well, certainly, Mr. Herbert, you see, the thing is, you cannot go wrong sticking with the biblical prescription and mandate given by God as it relates to family. And that's why I say oftentimes we don't see the results immediately, but as we would say in our local parlance, the chickens come home to roost eventually.
What else apart from that? I understand, well, that perhaps can be one of the things that can help us with the fix. What else you think can help?
One of the things that really, I guess, is also a troublesome thing that I see happening in our society, and probably would end up being a very controversial issue, especially in this forum, is that there is a blurring of the gender line, so to speak. And I know this is a very, very a topic that can create a firestorm. But when you look at what's happening in our society, there is a movement between almost what you want to call neutral gender. When it comes to men being men and women being women, you know, I think that there is a movement in our world, generally speaking, that really neutralizes men's roles and what it really means to be a man. And really that's one of the things. I'm not saying it's the only thing that's causing a lot of problems in our world, but it's one of the things that I think certainly is relevant to where we are as a society.
In essence, you're suggesting that some of the responsibilities that traditionally were assigned to men.
Yes.
And now those assignments are done by women.
Yes, and I'm not limiting this to, I'm not talking about careers. I know even within the gender affairs division we have a movement to allow, you know, to foster women being involved in non-traditional occupations. I'm not limiting it. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
I'm just talking about our culture in and of itself. You
operation
see this movement, yes,
in the society.
Right.
Even in the church, in terms of committees and groups and to get stuff done and so on.
Right. Men are no longer, you know, it's almost like a mixed bag. Men are no longer really asserting themselves in many forums as leaders, whether it's in the home, whether it's wherever else.
Okay, we got that happens. Do we have any reasons why this is happening? Why is it that they're not going forward? Because you're in the church, for instance, and no doubt a lot of the committees you have in the church, a lot of the stuff you have in the church headed by women, done by women, and so on?
I wouldn't say that necessarily in my church, but I'm really talking more broader afield.
Well, other establishments,
right.
Yes.
I think one of the root problems, Mr. Herbert, is that when it comes to the issue of male and female or gender, there appears not to be a great willingness to work together. It always appears at times that there is rather than men and women seeing how they can complement each other, whether it's in the home, whether it's in the workplace, whether it is in the schools, it's as if there's a competition. And so when women advance, it is done sometimes at the expense of men, or when men advance, it appears it's done at the expense of women. And I feel firmly that the things that we can embrace as male and female that help us to be able to complement each other and to work together in a variety of different situations are limited. It's as if a man does this, well, the woman has to compete to show that she can do the same thing. And if a woman does this, there's a competition among the genders rather than a avenue where the individuals work together and complement each other to be able to be better off.
So you think it's perhaps a change in the philosophy?
Yes. Yes.
But you are from a biblical background.
Absolutely.
Right. And probably about a week or two ago, I had some youth here, a young lady, and I asked my technical team to isolate it for me. I don't have it now, but she basically articulated some of the same views in terms of philosophical thinking. And you detect clearly that she came also from a biblical background, because she was making the argument that we have some issues with antisocial behavior because the roles of men, traditional roles, as perhaps even stipulated by the Bible, have been done by women now. And she opined or suggested that perhaps until we go back to the male being the head of the household and taking on certain chores or responsibilities, we will continue to have chaos.
Yes, and Mr. Herbert, see, I am unashamedly in defense of the Word of God and of the Bible, obviously, not only as a pastor, but as a believer, because I kind of gave this illustration to my Sunday school class a number of weeks ago. And if I'm the designer of something and I came up with it, I initiated it, I'm the one who orchestrated it from the very beginning, then I ought to know best how it should function. And God himself is the initiator, the designer, the orchestrator of not only marriage, but the institution of the home. And so if we, for whatever reason, whether we think we know better or we think, well, that's outmoded, it's old-fashioned, and I'm going to come up with a way that I deduce or feel is better, we're going to find ourselves in issues. Now, here's one of the big problems that when it comes to even the Word of God and the Bible as it relates to this, that people have a problem with, that we tend to conclude that if I am not the leader or I'm not in charge, then it means I am less than. If I am not the one who, as it were, is given the responsibility of leadership, then somehow I am not that significant. I am less important, and that is really not the case. And again, the other thing to recognize is we're talking about the institution of the home. It does not mean that a woman cannot be in leadership role in a company. It does not mean that a woman can be the leader in a government, in a country. It doesn't mean she can't be prime minister or president. But the Bible talks about the institution of the home. There has to be a leader, and God himself has prescribed that to be performed by the male. And so it creates a lot of issues in our society, but the truth of the matter is we're not coming up with better results, coming up with something that actually violates Scripture. But, you know, you asked, you know, how do we get here? How did we get here? Why are we here? I firmly believe it's because of a departure from the biblical prescription as it is given, and there's so many other effects that result from these things.
But a departure from the biblical teachings, right? But that the women are doing pretty well in the leadership positions. They have accentuated to that. But when we're talking about the departure of the biblical guidance and men are, not taking on the responsibilities, right? I don't know, but the women then rise to those positions and occasions.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you raised that point, because in no way am I faulting one or the other. And obviously, men have, in large part, responsibility, and probably more so of the responsibility to take, because it is clear, even from doing a casual view of where we are as a society and as a world, that men in large part have shirked their responsibility.
But while you're not, on the one hand, not faulting it, the fact that it is not happening, and it is the precepts of and the direction of the Word of God, then it should rightfully happen.
Sorry, I missed your...
If the Word of God dictates
right,
that in order for things to be run smoothly,
right,
it has a certain prescription,
correct,
which puts the male at the leadership position.
right,
They are not taking on that responsibility,
agreed,
and as a consequence,
correct,
the women do.
yes,
But as a pastor and as a people of God, should we be satisfied with that? Or should we do what is necessary to ensure that the Word of God is manifest?
right. And obviously, based on what I've emphasized, I'm talking holistically in terms of, for whatever the reasons are, a departure from what the Bible has mandated. And obviously, in order for that to turn around, the first thing is men have to step up to the plate and take their responsibility.
Okay, let me just accommodate this caller, Pastor. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Hello, good night, Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
And good night, Mr. Maynard.
Good night, good night.
This is Reggie from Newcastle, Reggie Reginald Douglas. Just calling in to let the general public know for the International Men's Day on the 24th. We also will be having some events for people to come on out and enjoy themselves. Mr. Maynard, we have some more information, but just to let the general public know, we'll be having the International Men's Day bike ride again. Mr. Maynard will let you guys know the time. We'll be having it at the Villa, starting at the Villa, and this time we won't be going stopping at Pinnis Beach. We'll be doing everything at the Villa this time around. So the cycling will take you from the Villa out to Four Seasons and back to the Villa with 2 laps around town, Samuel Hunkins Drive, come back to town, go around again. So we are going to meet up with the tour riders and heading back to the Villa once again. And from the Villa, we also will be having some other events there as well, like a few bike races, like 100-meter bike races and team bike races, so the family can come out and enjoy themselves as well. And also, I don't know if Mr. Maynard has mentioned that we'll be having a walkathon as well. Mr. Maynard, I think, will give you guys the route for the walkathon, because I don't have that at this time.
Reggie, before you go, how do persons get involved in terms of getting and coming and enjoy yourselves, as you said, and viewing the races and so on? That's one thing. How about participation? How can persons participate?
Yeah, let me add, and
yes.
just add a little bit to that.
Participation I was talking about in terms of if you don't have a bike, you can call Mr. Maynard at the Social Development Office, and just like last time, give him your height, and then once you have all that information down, he will contact me and let me know how much people he have, how much bikes he wants, and then the bikes will be delivered in the morning.
Okay.
So it's for the people to come on out, not just to watch, but to participate in these events and have some fun.
All right. Okay, Mr. Maynard, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to be able to let individuals know that the numbers to call in order to register based on the information that Reggie mentioned would be the switchboard 469-5521 extension 6291, and also you can reach us at cell phone number 665-6302.
Okay.
And while I'm here, I would like to thank Mr. Maynard once again for reaching out to me and having me being a part of this wonderful event. Last time, everybody had a great time, and I know for this time around as well, they will have a great time as well. So thank you again, Mr. Maynard, for reaching out to me. And for the bikes, again, the bikes are free. You don't have to pay for the bikes. As a small business owner and a Nivision, you know, I just want to give my contribution to Nevis at whole. So thank you again, Mr. Maynard, for reaching out to me and inviting everyone out to come on out and do the walk, and you know, let's do some socializing and you know, have fun.
All right. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks much. Well, we can lead right into it. We were doing some preliminary stuff about the role of men and where we're at and so on, because it's awfully important, you know, in terms, because everybody's talking about it. You know, that's one of the main things that everybody's talking about. But we can, as I said, he just introduced it, so let's go right into basically that activity and the other activities that you're having to commemorate International Men's Day.
Yes, and since Reggie brought it up, I'll highlight the bike-a-thon/walk-a-thon, which will take place on November the 24th, which is a Saturday morning. We'll start at 6 a.m. from the Villa grounds, and so we'll have bikers, both bikers and walkers. I would like to advise the public, however, there are a limited number of bikes available, so you would want to be able to contact us as soon as possible because those are available on a first-come, first-served basis. And so once those bikes have been already assigned individuals in order to participate in the bike-a-thon portion of the event, you would have to bring your own bike. But we will have bikers and walkers, and we also don't want individuals who may not have access to a bike not participate. You can come and you can be involved in the walk as well. The bike route, as Reggie mentioned, I'll just reemphasize, will begin at the Villa grounds. We'll go through Charlestown and get over to the Four Seasons area, and then we will turn around and we'll go back, and then once we're coming back into the town area, we will loop around the Samuel Hunkins Drive twice. We want to be able to make sure that our individuals understand that this ride is not going to be a race. It's as much as possible, we realize that we will have individuals of different age groups and different physical abilities, but we want to be able to have it as much as possible being a bike ride that is together. And in order to be able to facilitate that, once we get back into the town area, we'll loop around the Samuel Hunkins Drive twice, and so that once we're on the final leg into back to the Villa grounds, that we are moving together as a group, and we will get back there pretty much together. The walkers will also originate at the Villa grounds, but they will walk along the main road going up to the Bath Cemetery, and then turn left onto the bypass road and come all the way back around, work their way back into town, back to the Villa grounds as well. Once we get back, all walkers and riders get back to the Villa grounds, we will have a number of fun races which are meant to be obviously fun and help families and the entire participants to be able to interact with each other and have a good time. We've already orchestrated a number of events that will encourage families to work together. So when you call and register, also try to get your families organized of different age groups. For example, we have some races that will involve riding and walking at the same time there at the Villa grounds, which we call an open family relay. We have an individual bike race for both adults and children. There will be an individual fast walk and a 50-meter flat race as well for the young ones. And we also are acquiring medals for these events. So we will be distributing those at the time. And so it's all intended to be a fun atmosphere and a together atmosphere for family and for individuals in the community as well. And then on the completion of that, there will also be a hearty breakfast served for all those who would have participated, and I re-emphasize the word participated, in the walk and in the bike ride as well.
Now that's on the 24th.
Yes.
International Men's Day is celebrated
on the 19th annually. And so we really have a full slate of events that will take place during the entire month. And so the first thing will be a church service coming up this coming Sunday at the First Baptist Church there in Maddens, and that will begin at 11 a.m. And so we're encouraging men to come out, especially men from the community and with their families as well, to that church service. And then we will also have a Health is Wealth seminar, which will be held on Wednesday, November 21st at 6 p.m. And it will be held there at the new location for the Gender Affairs Department at the GMBC building, there shortly across from the hospital, upstairs. And there's a conference room there in which that Health is Wealth seminar will be held. It will feature some very relevant topics to men and to their health. And so we have medical professionals who will be hosting and will be speaking on those topics. So I want to encourage men to be there, and it will certainly be of great benefit.
So that's on the
Wednesday, the 21st.
On the 21st,
of November.
Okay. And what about the actual day on the 19th?
Yes, on the actual day, traditionally, and I expect it to be no different on this occasion, there will be an address that's given by the minister responsible for gender and or a representative, but that will be on the day in particular. We try to schedule events on days when we presume that we will be able to maximize participation. And so we don't actually have an event on this occasion in this year on November the 19th, but in the past we have tried our best to be able to do that, but it depends on how the calendar falls. And so we chose to be able to not have an event on the day in particular, but it will be celebrated locally, regionally, and internationally.
On to the theme, positive role models.
Yes.
And you did make either a comment or observation about the role models that we have now, right?
Yes.
This is the theme, positive role models.
Male role models.
Male role models. You mentioned, unfortunately, there's not an abundance of them.
Yeah, that's my view. And well, put it like this: not enough. Mm-hmm. And I, as I alluded to earlier, as we were talking about this issue, I think the challenge when it comes to a role model is that young people, and I've found this from observing my children, from being around young people, and even observing my own thought process, that we don't compartmentalize when we look at a role model. You see, and that's one of the issues that exist when we talk about positive role models, that we tend to look at individuals as a total person. And so when an example is not set in terms of an entire life, you end up teaching behaviors that you may not intentionally be trying to teach, but you're teaching them because they're being patterned. And what I'm simply saying is that much of what we do, or much of what is passed on to those who are looking at us, as they say, it is caught and not necessarily taught. You know, people pattern what they see. And so sometimes we don't recognize that our behaviors, while we may not want to teach that, we might not be saying that this is what I want you to do, but by virtue of us doing it, that's inadvertently what we end up doing.
You know, maybe in the second segment when the other panel gets in, it will probably be interesting to hear what their thoughts are, because I'm wondering, how do we arrive therefore at who is defined as a positive role model?
Well, to continue my thought process on what I've said, a positive role model would really be, or let's put it like this, a positive, effective role model.
Right, but you see, what I'm thinking, Pastor, is in our society, who determines and how do we determine that a person is a positive role model?
Well, let me say this. I do want to say that obviously we are human people, and none of us, whether you're the pastor or no matter who you are in society, you're not going to be a perfect human being, right? There's only one perfect, and that's God. So none of us are going to be perfect. However, I'm just emphasizing, as the theme talks about positive role models, that we just have to be extremely careful in the things that we want those who are looking at us to take from what we do. We just need to realize that we have to be a positive example in what we are doing. So in answer to your question, who is a positive role model? We are all role models in some ways, and in some things we communicate a positive behavior, and in not doing that positive behavior, we communicate a negative behavior. And so the goal should be that I'm going to, if I want something to be passed on, that I'm not only going to say it, I'm not only going to try to teach it, I'm not only going to communicate it with words, but I'm going to communicate it with action. And that's really, to me, what I'm saying should be the emphasis. Oftentimes we do know what is right and we do know what is wrong, but we sometimes put aside the idea that we are teaching negative behaviors by what we do, and we tend to, for example, I often see in the church setting, so many people say, you know, I'm going to try to raise my children right. And Pastor, I'm going to bring them to Sunday school, and I'm going to bring them to church. Well, the thing about it is, if you really wanted to, I'm going to take them. But if you really want that behavior to stick, you have to come with them, right? You know, it can't be, well, you know, you go, but I don't, and expect that to be effective. And I'm just using that as a simple example. If we're going to be positive and effective and impactful role models, whether male or females, we have to emphasize on what we do so much more than what we say.
In our remaining minutes, Pastor, what are some of the things that you know, folks who are listening would want to help? Because I'm sure if we do a poll or study, we'll find a higher percentage, perhaps maybe not like the direction that we are going.
Agreed.
So what are some of the things that in your department, or, you know, generally speaking, you find that we can do that can help?
Okay, one of the main things that I think we can do, and I'm speaking specifically as it relates to where we are as a society, is respect for authority. I think that's an area socially where there's been a great departure. You talk about how things were, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. I think when we look around, we have to recognize that there is a great breakdown. And from my position as a pastor and also in other areas of leadership, we have to recognize that we have to support positions of authority, and we cannot tear down positions of authority in other areas in our children's lives or in young people's lives and expect our own authority not to be eroded as well. And you see this happening so much in the schools where, you know, and this is something that I'm sure you would agree with me back in the day. I mean, if you somehow got in trouble at school, listen, the last thing you wanted your teacher to do was to tell your parent, because you knew that it was just going to get worse as a result. But now you have figures of authority involved in our children's lives, not working together to support each other, recognizing that we all have a position of authority that is there to help that child. So, for example, you have parents pitted against teachers, you have teachers pitted against the police. You have all these figures of authority have to work together for the benefit of the individual.
And it could be because of a difference in ideologies?
Well,
because, for instance, you'd hear perhaps stories that a parent might say, well, don't hit my child, or don't talk to my child that way, or this is how you should have dealt with it, and so on and so forth. And so the thinking, you see?
Yeah, I mean, but you see, the problem often is not that, it's not defending wrong, right? It's a matter of how you deal with something. Oftentimes, the first response is to tear down the figure of authority or to tell off the individual, rather than to say, you know what, let me get the other side of the story. Let me go and deal with this matter in an adult fashion, person to person, right? When you expose children or young people to a mentality that I'm going to tear down that figure of authority in your presence, we are seriously eroding the respect for that figure of authority, and also eroding our own position of authority in that child's life.
But you see, that's what I'm saying. The parent or whoever it is may not think that anything is wrong with that, because they're thinking. Caller, good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening. I'd like to ask the pastor, how much does he think the politicians set the example of animosity and fighting and tearing down each other? How much does that pass down onto the rest of the community?
Yeah, I think that it definitely contributes. As I mentioned about, we've been talking about this issue of role models. We have a responsibility as individuals in our society to set the example, and that has to be done at every level. And when that happens, we will see better results. When it doesn't happen at a political level, it doesn't happen at a pastoral level, it doesn't happen at a parental level, it doesn't happen at a educational level, we are going to experience problems. And there is no aspect and facet of society that is going to be exempt from this matter of setting an example, and as we're talking about the issue of positions of authority.
But ain't it true, Pastor, we first have to agree on the level or the standard? Because, for instance, in an example with a parent and discussing a certain matter in front of the child.
Right.
But I'm saying that in this example, the parent may not see anything wrong with that because of their thinking.
Right. So here's what has to happen. We have to teach or encourage others to change their thinking, because the results are not positive based on what is being done. And clearly, I'm an individual. I'm a very analytical kind of person. And we have to be able to, as people, connect the dots as to why is this happening? what behaviors am I exemplifying, demonstrating that are causing certain behaviors and behavioral patterns in my children? You know, I'll tell you this as a pastor, Mr. Herbert. Sometimes you look at life and you look at individuals, and it's kind of like this. It's kind of like watching a movie and you've seen the movie before, because you could almost predict what is going to happen. You can look at behaviors, you could look at things that individuals do, and you could look at even behaviors in children, and you could tell where it originates. You could tell all of these things. You know, there's nothing new under the sun. And so, you know, in answer to your question, you know, we have to be able to identify the causes, and it's not just based on my philosophy versus your philosophy, or how I think based on how you, versus what you think. It's what is the right thing to do, what is the appropriate thing to do, and that is why you know, emphasize and talk about the Bible. There is a guide. You know, if I want to be able to, if I'm a contractor or I'm a carpenter and I want to be able to determine the length of a particular any kind of distance, I get a ruler, I get a measuring stick, and that ruler tells me, or that measuring tape tells me the distance from here to here. It's my guideline. Right? There is a guideline for how we should function and how we should live, and I'll tell you, one of the things that is taught in the Bible from cover to cover is the issue of respect for authority, and really submission to leadership, and good leadership, and all of those things which help us function as human beings. And when we break down those tenets and those pillars within our society, we're going to have anarchy, we're going to have chaos, which is really, in large part, a lot of the things that we are seeing today, sadly.
Pastor Wayne Maynard of the Gender Affairs Division of the Nevis Island Administration. We're focusing on International Men's Day. When we come back with our remaining minutes, we will look again at some of the activities which will be held to commemorate International Men's Day, and the second segment of this program will be coming up right after that.
A place you can go to and relax and enjoy a healthy meal? Check out Island Life Vegetarian Food and Juice Bar, located at Pinny's Industrial Site below the supply office. They are open Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. They offer you healthy, delicious, nutritious food on a menu that boasts Ital food, sandwiches, burgers, roti, puddings, and much more. They have a wide variety of freshly squeezed fruit and vegetable juices and smoothies that includes beet, carrot, pumpkin, tamarind, star apple, and sarsaparilla, and much more. Contact them today at 660-5318 or 668-3107.
Island Roofing and Hardware Limited, located next to the Monduk Track on Long Point Road, Nevis, specializes in the manufacture of 24-gauge pre-painted Galvalume roof sheets and the sale of tropical green hat lumber. They offer the traditional corrugated roof design for residential buildings along with the U-panel design for commercial buildings. Their roof sheets measure 42 inches in width and are manufactured on site and can be cut to whatever length you desire, thus eliminating the need for joining your roof sheets. Their aluminum base roofing sheets, which are available at an affordable price of only $14 per foot, are of the highest quality. Their opening hours are Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily. For more information, call 664-2441 or 664-2959. Island Roofing and Hardware Limited, meeting your complete roofing needs by providing quality products at affordable prices.
When VON vibrates, the whole Caribbean must shake.
860 AM, the Powerhouse.
Back with our remaining minutes with Pastor Wayne Maynard. Pastor, let's go over quickly again the activities that you're putting on.
Yes, for International Men's Day, celebrated on November 19th each and every year, we have a slate of activities being sponsored and initiated primarily by the Gender Affairs Department, and that kicks off this coming Sunday with a worship service at the First Baptist Church there in Maddens. That begins at 11 a.m. We're encouraging men especially to come out to that church service and to bring your family, your friends, your loved ones, and to be able to worship together there at First Baptist Church. On Monday the 19th, which actually is International Men's Day, there will be an address given by the Honorable Minister of Gender Affairs or a representative, but that will be aired via the local media houses, and looking forward to that as well. And then on Wednesday, November the 21st, there will be a Health is Wealth seminar at 6 p.m. There at the GMBC building, which is the new home for the Gender Affairs Department upstairs, and looking forward to our men coming out. There will be a number of relevant health topics and issues that will certainly be of interest to the men who are in attendance. So we're encouraging men to participate in that. And then on the Saturday of the 24th of November at 6 a.m., there will be a bike-a-thon / walk-a-thon as well, and that will initiate at the Villa grounds, and the routes have been identified or pointed out earlier as well. And so we're encouraging all and sundry to come out to that event. It promises to be a wonderful time of socialization, interaction for family and the community, and there'll be breakfast served for all those who are participating in the activity, as well as a number of fundraisers for the entire family to enjoy. So we encourage you to support and continue to rally around each other as we seek to be positive role models, whether male or female, and work together to help our island and our society to be a better place.
Thank you very much, Pastor Maynard. And, well, let's see what's happening and what comes out of it.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Herbert. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's always a pleasure being on Let's Talk, and I want to say thank you to your audience, which we know is far-reaching, for listening, and trust that it's been of benefit tonight.
Pastor Wayne Maynard, Gender Affairs. Why don't you put in a plug for the church?
Definitely. I do want to say, and I did not get to say this at the beginning, I guess maybe it was, I do want to say certainly thank you to my wife and to my children. I certainly am very, very, very appreciative for their undying support for me as their husband and father. And I also want to say thanks to my dad, my mom, my brothers, and my sister, her family. And we have a unique privilege, Mr. Herbert, to be serving God together in one location. That is something that I don't take lightly. I also want to say thank you so much to our Loving Church family. They have really rallied around me and supported me. We've been back here now almost 4 years, and I've now just recently celebrated 3 years being the pastor. And it's been a career change for me, but it's been something that I've really relished. I didn't know that I could be in and would be in this position, but I certainly thank the church for their support, and also the community at large. And people have been very welcoming, and I certainly am happy to be back here in Nevis serving in this capacity, and I am just enjoying it in a way that I never truly imagined was possible.
It's great being a pastor.
It absolutely is, Mr. Herbert, and I'm hoping that somehow there'll be more who would venture into this very rewarding field, and a calling that is the highest calling ever, to be called by the Almighty God to be able to fulfill His will in furthering His kingdom on planet Earth.
But I heard you just can't go, you know. You have
exactly. You have to be called. Mr. Weber, you're a smart man.
Pastor Wayne Maynard, thank you very much for making us a part of your program for Gender Affairs, and wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much. Have a pleasant evening.
That's the first segment of the program. The heavyweights will be in right after these.
Tiles and more tiles. Builders Paradise is the largest supplier of tiles. Tiles from as little as $3.95. Tile cement, 50-pound bag from as little as $37.44. And oh, don't forget to check out their Saturday sale for even better discounts. Visit them today at C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site, St. Kitts, or call them at 466-4938. Builders Paradise, where your island dreams begin.
Island Roofing and Hardware Limited, located next to the Monduchak on Long Point Road, Nevis, specializes in the manufacture of 24-gauge pre-painted Galvalume roof sheets and the sale of tropical green hat lumber. They offer the traditional corrugated roof design for residential buildings along with the U-panel design for commercial buildings. Their roof sheets measure 42 inches in width and are manufactured on site and can be cut to whatever length you desire, thus eliminating the need for joining your roof sheets. Their aluminum-based roofing sheets, which are available at an affordable price of only $14 per foot, are of the highest quality. Their opening hours are Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily. For more information, call 664-2441 or 664-2959. Island Roofing and Hardware Limited, meeting your complete roofing needs by providing quality products at affordable prices.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results with the second segment of the program. First segment, we heard Pastor Wayne Maynard of the Gender Affairs Department here on Nevis and Nevis Island Administration. He was getting us up to date on the activities that they're keeping for International Men's Day, and that will be on the 19th. So please support those activities. The second segment of this program. Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly the gracious people of Nevis and those who will be listening to us on the World Wide Web and throughout the Caribbean Basin. Well, we had a very interesting program on the first segment, but let me just throw out something which I think might be critically important to the lawmakers.
Let's go to Naya first. Get a good evening from Naya, and then I'll come right back to you when everybody has marked their name. Naya, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to your staff. Good evening to everyone in tune to this program, and I'm looking forward to a good discussion. We only have an hour, so we'll enjoy every moment of it. Good evening, Webbo. Thanks for having me again.
Ted Hobson, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and I want to say good evening to my fellow panelists, and of course, say hello to all of those wonderful people who listen to this program week after week. And I thoroughly enjoy the first segment of this program tonight, and I sincerely hope that there'll be some discussion on that later on. So good night again, Webbo.
Dr. Patricia Bartlett, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to the entire listening and viewing audiences. Good evening to my husband.
Okay, now I have to go back to Edric, I promise that. But, okay, Edric, go ahead and make the point that you're making, because I have something to start off with you.
Well, based on the unfortunate occurrence on Thursday morning early, based on information reaching my desk, I must say to law enforcement and or parliamentarians, just in case there is a warhead that is found in a perpetrator and the matching gun is not found, I hope there is law on the books which could utilize another system which the law enforcement people have, and in lieu of a lost gun, that system could be used to ensure that the warhead that was used or found in that perpetrator can be brought together with this part of the equipment that lawmakers or law enforcement officials, the police in particular, would have. I'm just saying there are loopholes in the law, and sometimes these attorneys are so cunning that they would grab that loophole, and ultimately the perpetrator gets away scot-free. The reason why I'm saying this is that I was present in the courtroom. I went to see an attorney friend of mine who was leaving for St. Thomas, and I was able to identify a perpetrator when the judge was sentencing this perpetrator. He was only caught simply because the warhead, which was found in his body, was matched with or by the gun that from which that warhead came. In the absence of the gun and the presence of the warhead, we must find ways to ensure that that perpetrator does not get away. So if that law is not on the books, I am admonishing the lawmakers now to begin to get up to speed that the absence of a gun, but the presence of the warhead, let's bring them together.
Okay, and on that topic, somebody's up. I think everybody thinks that I'm a messenger, but I'm cool with that. Because somebody gave me a message to you, to give you, on that topic. But, but they told me to give you off here, so I didn't get it.
Well,
but because they're always giving me messages to give you.
Well, that's all right, Webo.
Okay, but that's all right, you getting them, but who says it's all right I being a messenger?
Listen,
that's cool too, but anyway, that's just a light moment.
Comment.
No, before that, how could, you made a statement just now. You said that sometimes a warhead is found in someone, and because of the fact that the gun cannot be found, that perpetrator can get away scot-free.
Well,
but that's not logical, Edric.
There are loopholes, Webo.
No, how could you get away scot-free when a warhead is inside you?
Well, let's leave that up to the courts.
No.
I'm saying to you, let me bring your case in point.
No, but that's not logical.
Well, you may not see the logic in it.
Ted, any logic is in that? How can a perpetrator get away scot-free and the warhead is lodged inside him or her?
I'm talking about the nth degree. We now need a conviction. That's what I'm attempting to say, Webo. I sometimes don't want to take up too much time, and there are times when certain facts are lost in the statements.
Okay, so you wanted to add something, so let's finish up on it then.
Well, I brought to the fore big issues last Tuesday night, and one of the big issues was the lack of information regarding the National Health Scheme. And fortunately, I heard they had first town hall meeting on Monday, this past Monday. So,
moving in the right direction.
Talk that gets result. Who knows? Maybe we just put a little fire under them. And
they probably heard you.
And they probably brought it to the fore.
Okay.
They heard it from the mic of One Radio.
Okay.
Well,
I'm not so sure, but anyway. I wish I hope they would come to the mics of One Radio to discuss that as well, because I find that, or let me put it this way, you don't find it interesting that when there are certain issues of national importance, critical importance, to be discussed that will affect the lives of people greatly. The methods and the efforts used to inform the public are one thing. On the contrary, when they are campaigning to win a seat, to get into parliament, their efforts are multiplied greater. So I'm just wondering if can't we use the same tenacity to educate people on these things that are of national importance and so on and so forth. The same tenacity that they use when we are trying to get a winner seat.
It's left to be seen, Webber.
It's left to be seen.
When I say
but
that,
we are always seeing it, even with the in those two islands, Grenada and Antigua, where they had the Caribbean Court of Justice, right?
Referendum.
People are making decisions on these things, and a lot of people don't understand what's going on. And I am wondering if it's not deliberate, because we've got so many brilliant lawyers, and they got monies that they can use to go to the same forums to educate and make sure that people are knowledgeable. But what they do, in my view, sometimes they use avenues which they know people don't normally turn out to, but they would say that they had them. So maybe what we can do is, when we're having these things of such great importance, use the same avenues and the tenacity that is used, are used when you're trying to win a seat.
Well, we'll keep their feet to the fire, Webber.
Well, maybe we'll get burned. Okay, but what I wanted to put to you, Edric, and I said it on my early morning program as well, and we're going to come to one or two of the issues that we discussed earlier in the first half of the program. But I had said, and your President Trump had said it, that when they demonstrated when he got elected, and he almost mockingly said to the demonstrators, you all should have voted. And then I said, sometimes they have a saying, be careful of what you ask, because you might get it.
That's right.
So what happened was, the turnout was, went through the roof.
They took his advice.
They took his advice.
Yeah.
But he didn't like the results.
So maybe he should not have
No, he shouldn't have.
asked for it.
No.
So what do you think?
Well, fortunately, the Democrats, to check on Trump, because I could tell you, Trump is heading straight down that avenue to become a dictator. And he's attempting to destroy many of the institutions that have held the United States, this great nation, north of us, together. And I'm saying to you, you look at, did you see what happened when he was in France? Him and Putin showed up together, late. And he wants to portray the image that he is such a lover of the military. And the time had come for him to be there on time. But he never went. And I said it before, Trump is attempting to become one who can deliver the West to the East.
Do you think he'll get it done?
No, Webber. I think there are people who would make the sacrifice of life to avoid that to ensure that that doesn't happen.
But you don't get the feeling that right will always find its rightful place, though sometimes it takes a while.
Quite so. Right will always triumph over wrong. Good will always triumph over evil. A lot of people do not understand it.
It's just that sometimes it takes time.
It's a slow-moving process, unfortunately.
Okay, quickly. Ted, the Caribbean Court of Justice, it failed in Antigua, it failed in Grenada the other day. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was extremely disappointed in the results of both in Antigua and in Grenada. And it was strange because more people voted against it than voted for it. I didn't think they were going to ever reach the threshold of 2/3. We had the same problem here when we had our referendum, because I think the threshold is much too high. In most countries, the referendum is decided on a 50+1. But for these referenda that are taking place, it's got to be 2/3 majority, 66 point something. Anyway, well, it really is disappointing, because what is so strange about it is that we're always talking about white people coming and white people this and our people and so forth. And yet, it seems as though the majority of our people are content to see the final court manned by white people, and they're quite comfortable with that, which I find is strange. I mean, we are supposed to be an independent country, and you would have thought that we have reached the stage where we have confidence in our own people, and that we would cherish the idea of having our own people dealing with matters such as justice, which is an extremely important matter to every individual. And to think that, you know, we in the Caribbean, because of politics, and it's pure politics. I mean, I listened to the opposition in Grenada after the referendum there, and I listened to the opposition in Antigua, and they're all saying they are sorry that it went down. But they did everything they can to sow the seeds of discontent and so forth. And, you know, it's going to come a time when the Privy Council would say to these territories, you're independent countries, and we shouldn't be bearing the brunt of having to establish a court to look after you. And I pray that time comes sooner than later, because as it is, we in St. Kitts do not have to have any referendum. We can go straight into it by an act of parliament. But I think that situation with the boundaries a couple of years back, when the Privy Council at the last moment save unity and save the country possibly, I think people are still having a certain feeling about that, and wondered what would have happened if it was the CCJ dealing with the matter, because you remember that the Court of Appeal, Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal, sided with the original judge and upheld the boundaries as determined by the Labour Department, the Labour government. So I think we here are a little concerned about that, and the public are concerned about that. But I hope people would realize that the time has come when we in the Caribbean has to look after our own situation, our own affairs. And I have enormous confidence in the judiciary, both in the Eastern Caribbean, of course, the CCJ. They're well-qualified persons. You can't get on the CCJ without being a person of enormous intellect and character.
But Ted, two things though. Number one, you are in a position, and you probably will be knowledge, and you're not very knowledgeable, and so you can make the conclusion. But the question is, it affects everybody else. So, is the majority comfortable with that last statement you just made? And secondly, I think last week when we were here, there was almost a consensus that they think that the trust is a problem.
Well, yes, Webber.
There was no consensus on that, but go ahead.
People talk about trust and all that sort of thing. The logic of what took place in Grenada and in Antigua tells me that if people had their choice, they would prefer to have the colonial system back again, where the white people used to run these countries. Because, if we...
and why is that so? Why?
If they still want the foreigners, the white people, to determine, the most vital part of our existence, fairness and justice and so forth, if they prefer the white people to deal with that, Well, I mean, they would prefer them to run these countries.
Right, but you often hear, though, arguments and debate that our own people seem to treat us worse. Correct?
I've heard that.
Right. So and these are the realities of things.
But our own people didn't enslave us.
But it may not be true. But expectation is a big thing.
Yeah.
You see, and based on our own people didn't enslave us, and so as a consequence, putting your own people there, you had a certain expectation. Maybe it's too high. I don't know, but you have to understand and feel what people are saying, whether you agree with it or not.
I don't understand it, Bebo. I don't understand. You're telling me that you prefer to trust the people, our own people who have come from wherever and qualified and a part of us. You prefer to trust them to our own people? I mean, I don't understand.
Naya.
I don't understand it.
Well, it's nothing new. I sometimes feel like the politicians them trust the white folks more than the black folks too, because they see in them possibilities. And you'll be surprised to know the way even lawyers function here with the white folks. Sometimes they don't go very hard on them because they may exist some possibilities directly or indirectly, because they tend to have that play in our society. Sometimes I refer to it as they refer to it as the white privilege. But Webo, as I said last week, I believe if you have left this decision totally, if the issue was sufficiently promulgated and discussed, debated in community centers and everything, and if it's left to the people without that political ingredient, I believe that the people would have voted for the CCJ. I believe the distaste that exists is one that comes from the politicians and the mistrust sometimes that they have in that institution, and of course they have their followers, and that's always a problem. But it's about nationalism, it's about regionalism, national pride, regional pride. But I really don't think, I think the politicians are mostly there to confuse the people on these very, very serious decisions, because do they really care about the consequence of the decisions, really, in a sense? Because, I mean, if they're in power today, they speak over one side of the mouth, they're in a position tomorrow, they speak up the other side. So I do feel, Weber, without that political ingredient and that political mix or pollution, that enter the minds of the people, that they oftenly try to obfuscate the minds of the people with, we would have seen more positive result based on regionalism, nationalism. And as I say, Webo, the politician doesn't really go out there and try to speak of the region. I think, and I mentioned it last week, I don't know who's going to break this thing. When a politician is elected, the first thing he say, he's paying some allegiance to the Queen and their family, but they do not speak to they don't even thank the people who just put them in power, who just voted for them. So they tend to continue this colonial thing and give the impression that for some reason they can't break that tie. So we now see them playing, that kind of game with the colonial masters. I mean, what is the Commonwealth? They all went to England the other day. Instead, they asked the Queen for reparation. They're up the talking, saying, okay, yes, we accept Prince Charles to be the head of the Commonwealth now. They don't speak, they don't represent, as if they want to put us back under this, we're the common poor. The Commonwealth are South Africa, the white countries that make up the Commonwealth. We, the black countries, we have completely different arrangement with England. But we don't see these things, it looks like. So the politicians then continue to finger lick with this colonial thing. And what you expect, the people have lost trust in you guys, basically. And therefore, they are frustrated about the whole matter, and they vote along political lines. They tend to follow, the political parties. This is what they want with the electorate. I mean, they want to employ all of them so they can control them and so forth. I mean, the situation is bad. And when these results show up, I blame those who are at the helm of society and those who have asked to be elected and to be leaders of the society. Because, of course, there must be a revolution, Rebel, if we are to see ourselves in a wholesome way here in the Caribbean.
Dr. Bartlett, Ted pointed out something, and I'd like to get your view on how you think it might affect at least St. Kitts Nevis going forward in terms of the CCJ. He pointed out the incident with the boundaries and how, the case was going back and forth in the High Court and the appeal cases and so on. And then, as Ted put it, it went to the Privy Council, and then in some person's view, that is what saved the country.
Was justice.
Right. And so persons who experience that, right, what sort of effect it would have on them going forward?
But just to put the whole case in perspective, though, it's not fair to assume that had the CCJ been in play here, that the decision would have been any different.
Right, I agree.
So I don't understand that to be a basis for us to want to hold on to the Privy Council, because...
But I meant in terms of, you see...
how people feel.
Yes, and the court system. Because, remember, it is the same Caribbean judges.
Yeah, but it's a different level. And we know that we have appeals, and we know that sometimes you have decisions that are being overturned and all that.
And so that you don't think then it will have any effect on... I'm speaking about, people in general.
If it were to be presented to the people the way I think it ought to be, not in the hands of, not coming from necessarily the voices of the politicians, if, I'm just saying if, then I think people could be educated as to, I know I would have touched on it last week as well, but people generally just vote, and I don't know what the case is in Grenada. I don't know what the case was in Antigua either. I suspect, and it's one thing for you to speculate, but if we were to get a poll, to find out what were the issues, why is it people voted the way that they did, and I think we need to use this as a teaching moment. We need to find out why is it the people in Antigua voted the way they did. Why is it the people in Grenada voted the way they did? I don't think it had anything to do with race, and I know that has been brought up. I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with trust, and that has been brought up, but that is just me, the way I am thinking. I just think that people were voting along party lines and not understanding, the full ramifications of everything, whether or not, what advantages there are, or really, considering them, in a serious way. So when it is our turn, I'm hoping that the Bar Association maybe could take the issue and run with it. I mean, I don't think we should leave it up to politicians. If you really have, even as an individual, I think, people who have the special interest in it should be the ones really to move the issue forward. I don't think they should leave it up to politicians. Obviously, they're the ones going to have, they're the ones in control of the system, and they're the ones who, going to orchestrate it the way they wish anyway, But I'm just saying it's up to us as a 98% literate society, to get involved in these issues, debate the issues, inform people who have very little interest, but who it would impact in any event. Get everybody involved, and I think that the outcome would be what people really want. Whether it is, and I don't think it has anything to do with whether it's a white man or a rich man or a black man. I don't think it has anything to do with that ultimately.
Okay, quickly, and I want to move on to something else, but quickly on that, Edric, is it practical to get it done outside of politicians and politics?
It's very impractical, and I would tell you, justice might have some kind of coloration, but Ted emphasized send it to the white man, or he went to the white man. I don't think these guys even look at it as a color issue more than as a legal issue, and as a result, they adjudicate it. And in my view, Pat mentioned about this poll. We do polling all the time among ourselves. However we do it, whether we go in the phone book and we pick up all the numbers, block out the names, however you want to do it, it's based on trust, it's based on numbers, it's based on the politicians, it's based on the party in power or the party that's out of power, those who control the number of votes. Now, who put those two referenda forward? The government in power?
Yeah.
The government?
Both governments. Yes.
So they had the votes. Because the
and in Grenada, they have no opposition at all in the House.
They got the votes, but still couldn't deliver on something that they put forward, which they were expecting to be in their favor. But people rejected it. So when one attempts to bring the argument, we need a poll to find out this. We got the poll is there.
Where's the poll? Stanley just chatting rubbish sometimes.
You,
what poll are you talking about? Reference, reference one poll that has been done that indicate to us why the people voted the way they did.
Polls are conducted in different ways.
But you're just chatting nonsense. Stanley, polls are done, in different ways. Who would have done a poll?
I'm just saying to you, the politicians got the numbers and they lost.
But the thing is, sometimes politicians have numbers, but it's just 51%. Sometimes you have politicians sometimes in government who they don't even have the majority of the votes. We have the situation right here. You have Labour have more votes than the current, government in St. Kitts. So what is your argument?
My point is that
your point doesn't make sense.
Well, it doesn't make sense to you
because
you don't see it.
No, but it does not make sense because you don't need a 2/3 majority to control the parliament.
I'm not saying the threshold of 2/3 as the case might be.
But that is the threshold that they had to meet in Grenada.
My thing is that you have to take all the dynamics. You cannot isolate them. Race, age, numbers in terms of voting power, the control of government, who control. You cannot isolate all. They are part and parcel of the process. So in that regard, it failed, and it failed miserably simply because people just don't trust.
But you don't know that to be a fact.
You don't know, but I know. You don't know, but the issue came out, the numbers are there, the results came out.
The results came out.
You can't say I don't know, the numbers came out.
Ted.
But all of the entrenched clauses in the Constitution of all these territories that have got their independence from Britain, to change any aspect of it, the entrenched clauses, you have to have a referendum. And I fear that these constitutions are going to remain on the book for 100 years or more. You're not going to get anything changed from what I see. So when people talk about constitutional reform, it's a waste of time because I cannot foresee the people of this country giving any particular group 2/3 to change anything. So we are going to be lumbered with this constitution forever.
But you mentioned that in St. Kitts Nevis, the laws are there and they could go into parliament.
No, insofar as the CCJ is concerned.
I understand that. But the other
part as the constitution I'm talking about.
Yes, but the other countries.
Yeah, they have to have referendum. Because
most of the constitutions.
You remember we were
one and the same.
Remember we were the last one of the last countries in the region to get independence. I don't know if you realize that.
I know.
And that is why there is slight change because people became more enlightened at that stage.
I understand all that too, but you made a point. Again, there were black slave owners, not in the Caribbean, but they were black slave owners. But they were in the northern part of the United States.
There were or are?
Well, you could still whichever verb you want to use, whether past or present, as the case might be.
So both?
Well, let me put it this way. there were black slave owners.
Yeah, but I asked.
Were.
Or were.
Well, if you...
Or both.
If you were to look at what's happening now, they still exist.
So both?
You understand? So you could use if you want to. Both.
Edric W. Stanley, Conrad Nye Liber, Ted Hobson, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Back after these.
When VON vibrates, the whole Caribbean must shake.
860 AM, the Powerhouse.
Just arriving at Builder's Paradise. Brand new mirror bypass doors. Sizes include 4 feet, 5 feet, and 6 feet. Oh, and don't forget to check out their Saturday yard sale for even better discounts. Builder's Paradise, where your island dreams begin. Looking for a place you can go to and relax and enjoy a healthy meal? Check out Island Life Vegetarian Food and Juice Bar, located at Pinny's Industrial Site below the supply office. They are open Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. They offer you healthy, delicious, nutritious food on a menu that boasts Ital food, sandwiches, burgers, roti, puddings, and much more. They have a wide variety of freshly squeezed fruit and vegetable juices and smoothies that includes beet, carrot, pumpkin, tamarind, star apple, and sarsaparilla, and much more. Contact them today at 660-5318 or 668-3107.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results with Conrad Nye Liebert, Edric W. Stanley, Ted Hobson, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. In the first half of the program, we were speaking about International Men's Day, which is on the 19th. And I wanted to get some comments. Maybe somebody has something to add before I move on. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, before you move on. Our prejudice goes back very, very, very deep. How we've been indoctrinated from way back into how we look at ourselves as black people. For instance, right now, I'm going to ask you guys here, how many of you believe that biblical Adam was the first human being on the planet?
No, I don't believe.
Go around the room. How many of you believe that the biblical Adam was the first human being on the planet?
Me, I don't believe personally.
I haven't got my radio down, so I can't hear your answer.
People want to keep their views private on that one.
Okay,
Just
well,
move right along, yeah.
You know why? Because we've been so indoctrinated. We don't realize that when the slave owners came here, they had already come here with a preconceived idea that they were the superior race, right? And everything that's interpreted from the Bible shows them to be the superior race. The black, historically, scientifically, and originated in Africa, right? The Bible originates in Mesopotamia, in Iraq, and but I'm saying that I'm going to jump forward now. We have a hard time seeing ourselves as people that have a heritage and a history which is independent. We've been so put down that we've taken everything that colonialism has given us and not investigated the reality. Even when science tells us the same science that we jump in the airplane and flies to Miami tells us that how low the earth is. We don't want to accept it because we don't understand the Bible that they brought us in a way that we don't understand it in light of science. We accepted how someone else has brought it to us, and all down the line, everything that we've been brought to us by the colonial system, we've accepted. And as Hobson said just now, we have a chance to see ourselves as different people. like the discussion that we have here on this radio station and all over the Caribbean, these talk shows, we have brilliant people who, if they really sat down and saw themselves as one family and one people and said, how can we improve ourselves? And how can we be better in this situation? What is wrong with what's been handed down? How can we change this? Right? But we have so much fear that's been indoctrinated from the past that we're afraid to investigate the reality of ourselves.
But caller, let me ask you this: how brilliant can we be if we can do that?
No. You can be, but the capacity is there, right? But there's fear. There's fear of stepping outside of the so-called bounds that have been handed down to us. The capacity is there. Right now, you guys are even talking stuff now, which right now, in limited time and space, you have to confine your thoughts into, a 2-hour program. But the issues that you're talking about, sitting down and not getting up until we resolve it, no more debating, but consulting. Debate is who wins. Consulting means finding out all the issues and coming to a common ground and a consensus on how we can move forward, move everybody forward.
Okay.
But
caller, could you finish up?
Yeah. Well, basically, I mean, it's having time to really trust ourselves and the capacity that God gave us through prayer and consultation, action and reflection. We can solve any problem in the world that exists, but we have to get away with debating and division and divisiveness. Anyhow, that's it.
All right. Okay. Thanks much. Now, I wanted, as I said, to go on to something, the International Men's Day coming up on the 19th, and the theme, the focus, positive role models. And so when Pastor Wayne was here, I discussed with him a little on that, because he made a comment, and a lot of people are of the same view, that we are short on positive role models, right? And so I asked the question, well, so who determines, or how do you determine that somebody is a role model, and who determines it? So, Edric.
Well, we all have our own interpretation. And I listened. The Bible, of course, is a yardstick by which we have to measure ourselves.
Yeah, but for
role
the
model,
but for the
you
society.
You have to be disciplined. And if you're not disciplined, truly disciplined.
Yeah, but for the society, Edric, if we are at the conclusion of the holy view that we are short of positive role models, the question is, who determines who is a role model, a positive role model, and how did we come to that conclusion? Because you understand what I'm trying to get at?
I do understand, because he did mention we're not perfect. The only perfect person who ever walked this earth was Jesus Christ.
Right, but it still comes down to the society that we have. If we conclude that we're in lack of positive role, let me go to Dr. Bartlett, because Dr. Bartlett is shaking her head. So, Dr. Bartlett, what do you think?
Well, I think our society, and we're not sitting down and saying that this is what a role model is, or positive role model is, but I think just based on our morals, and over time, I think most of us in the room would have conceptualized at some point what a positive role model is. And it's basically, for me, it's based on someone who is, like the preacher would have said earlier, someone who is walking the walk, not just talking it. There are a lot of people who would say things and then they do something that is contrary to that. So in our society, and obviously it would be different in other places, we have kids here, and it's a lot of pressure on people who are in the media, conduct themselves in a way, that people would consider them to be positive role models. I don't know that necessarily most of us who are placed in that, because you have to be in a position of high visibility for somebody to be, and when I say that, I mean, people looking at you, and if you're not up, they can't, if they have to look down, most of the times they can't see you. They wouldn't model themselves after you if they have to look down to see you. So once you have been elevated, there's a certain level, a certain standard of behavior that is expected.
So positions then, certain positions or offices?
Right,
That's what
as
you
long
meant?
as long as you're holding an office or a position that is higher than mine, I emulate you. Because, like I said, I'm not going to model my behavior off of somebody else who is below me necessarily. So people who are set above, whether it is high visibility because you're a politician, because you're a teacher, nurse, a doctor, whatever it is, we ought to start conducting ourselves as if we're role models for people. And if we want to impact the society in a positive way, we have to be positive role models. So we're going to have to recognize these things in our society that we consider good traits to pass on to other people.
So let me see if I'm understanding you, Dr. Badich. So in the society, certain offices or certain positions, if you hold them,
yes,
then the society views you as a positive role model. For instance, you said maybe politics, right? So that, all right. So could it be then that might be where the problem is? Because really,
that is it. Because sometimes we have people in positions and they dishonor the positions in which you place them. Like you have a priest, you don't expect a priest would molest a child, and he does that, and he breaks trust, and then right away, you lose, that office itself lose integrity just because of the person who would have been in there who compromises the office.
Dr.
So we have to be careful.
Do you realize you've just made a very fully heavy loaded statement?
Well, I don't know which statement you reference to.
But the answer to the question that I asked, that when you basically said that the politicians or whoever occupy these positions,
yes,
and the society being at a level or a stage where it seems to be commonly accepted that we are short of positive role models, is basically suggesting that these persons who are now holding these very important positions are failing.
Of course we have failures, yes, and I don't know if it's enough of an excuse for us to just say, well, we are all human and then, we're not perfect. There's an expectation, and whenever you start to compromise, whatever the position is, whether it's because you're a mother, there's certain expectation associated with that. And if you start behaving like, you're not, in a certain way, then people lose respect for mothers, and so we have to be careful, as adults, because most of the times adults are the ones who are the role models, people are looking towards, and if we're not finding positive role models and kids get a little disillusioned sometimes, then they turn to other, elements in the society that are generally just not positive role models.
Okay, Ted?
I think all of us are born with the perception of what is right and wrong. And when one sets up a situation where a person have some control or supervision over your life, you expect to find in those people the kind of what you consider the best in the person. For instance, right now in the United States, the people of the United States used to look up to their president and as a role model. You had Obama, who tried very, very hard, and he was an excellent role model to everybody. Now you have a situation where, of course, I mean, the talk every day on radio and so forth is that the president of the United States is not a role model for most people. And so, and you look around our politicians and you expect them to do the right thing, because if they have some control over you, some supervision over you, and most Most of these people have some control in that it can affect your life. They can change laws which affect you. And so you expect that if they are going to be in that position, they ought to be endured with certain qualities that you can look up to. And if they don't have those qualities, then of course they're not role models to you. Mm-hmm. If a father or mother behave in such a way to their children, who look up to them, because who else as a child you're going to look up to? Your father and your mother and the people around you, your aunt, your uncles, and they're expecting you to do the right thing. Otherwise, you can't tell them when they're doing the wrong things. I mean, I looked up to my father, and I felt that he was a perfect role model, and I tried all my early life when he was alive, and even now, to do things that I feel that he would be proud of me if I adhere to those things. And that is what a role model is about. I had a principal, the first principal of the Georgetown Secondary School, a man called Mr. Gaston Orville Fox, and he to me was my role model all my years as a student in England and so forth. I looked to him. And when I was qualified, I actually sent for him and bring him here for him to stay with me, because he, to me, was the kind of role model that, in a sense, transformed my life.
But on one of the things that we discussed earlier, Ted, mm-hmm. is that you see the things that you talked about, which to you wanted to emulate and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But what is happening now, though, is that people have different thinking, different philosophies, and things that you might think may not be so good or that are wrong. People generally accept them as okay.
I agree with you. I understand that.
So thus
but
the
right is
the
right
confusion.
and wrong is wrong.
Of course, and I made a point.
That's why I said and each person has this wonderful gift of knowing what is right and what is wrong.
And that's why we had saw that.
They may not follow it, but they know what is right.
Right, and we said earlier that, and right always find its rightful place. Sometimes it takes a little time. Naya.
Well, I must agree with what I've been hearing as it relates to role models. Yes, it would be more impacting if a role model is highly visible, a person of authority, and so forth. The question about whether or not we have positive role models. I think we do have positive role models, Webo. To me, personally, a role model doesn't have to be that visible. For me personally, but if we think of the society in a whole, yes, an individual or individuals impacting in a positive way, as, morally upright and honest and everything else, and seeing some success in his or her life as well, that would impact positively. But there are everyday people who you look at in their circumstance, who are very faithful, honest, and sincere, and have that obligation to do good, and do good as well. They are not very visible, but when you speak to them, you realize, their calmness and their contentment and everything. And you say to yourself at times, I wish I was like this individual, because he or she seems to be so happy in his or her little world, and he or she just exuberate good things, positive things, moral-wise in terms of communication. So yes, it would be more impacting if there is an individual who is highly visible, and we can all learn and earn. And of course be inspired by him or her, but not always. We must find wisdom in very simple places too, and out of the minds of very simple everyday people.
Okay, let me just take this. Good evening. Please call back, Edric.
Well,
okay, just a second, personal. Caller, please call back. I'll get you on, but Edric, go ahead.
The Bible, which we all are Christian. Well, no, I shouldn't really say we all are Christians here, but The Bible is a book, and nearly everything you would read in it, it gives you some guidance as to how you could be a good person. And as you go along through life, you can conceptualize what a good person is or should be, and you work toward those goals. And if you work toward those goals, take the call, Webber.
Good evening. Thank you for holding. Good evening. You're on the air.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert. Good evening to the panelists. I would like to say congratulations to Mr. Theodore Hobson on his achievement of celebrating 55 years of the St. Kitts Nevis Bar. Kudos to him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
well, let's all add in and congratulate Ted.
Thank you very much.
And to say how we benefit, well, speaking on my own behalf, because I don't know, can I speak for you too, Edric?
No.
So you don't benefit immensely from Ted's 55 years?
Well, Ted has contributed to his country.
So you don't benefit?
I don't say I do or don't. Let me be neutral on this. I mean, I understand.
Okay, well, let me finish up then.
Well, finish up, well.
So how grateful I am to have benefited from that immense wealth of experience. Okay, so you go ahead then, Edric.
So
yes,
as I was saying, that we have ways to determine as to whom we are, why we are, what we are. And as we grow older, a certain level of wisdom, understanding, experience, and we see ourselves as our own role model, because I want to be a good person. I try to be fair, right, all the time. As a result, I do things that people would see that I am doing right and creating the right impact. There are people who, of course, see, but it doesn't mean that they would emulate. And sometimes you cannot measure simply because you may not have been able to influence anybody, because you carry the horse to the water, and I've carried quite a number of horses to the water, and they have not drunk.
Well, if they didn't see you drink.
And as a result...
Yeah, but respond to Dr. Bartlett.
I didn't really hear what Pat said.
But tell him again, Pat.
I just said you have to drink so that they could see you drink.
Well, to be honest, based on what the pastor said, you have to do so that they see. Now, if I tell you, here is the roadmap to certain things that are positive, upright, and good, and I could show you the evidence.
But Pat said you must also drink.
Well,
and let them see you drink.
If I didn't drink, I wouldn't be able to impart the information, knowledge, the wisdom.
But you said you led them to the water.
Well,
but you did not drink.
I drank. I drank. I drank. And because I drank, it obviously has
Dr.
reflected
that's a big one you scored him.
I have arrived at where I am at that particular juncture.
So you led them to the water and drank?
Quite true.
And then they did not drink?
They didn't drink. You understand? And that's the problem we are having in our society these days. There are so many people here that should be emulated. Good Christians, good successful businessmen.
So that comes to the part of the question, and that is why I ask, who determines in this society that person A or person B is a good role model? Because you made a point, there are lots of people who, should be emulated. But the question is, who determines, for instance, that Naya is a good role model?
Naya has his followers, and they would see, and ultimately would give him his kudos. See, somebody just called and gave Ted kudos simply because Ted has impacted positively, not only on that person, but quite a number of other persons.
So is it possible then that we actually have a lot of very good, positive role models, But then whoever it is, I'm not identifying or not recognizing them or something like that. Is that possible?
Sure, because again, you have your detractors for whatever reason. Because there are times we do things and sometimes not realizing that we have offended somebody. And that, whether right or wrong, that person may never be on your bandwagon as someone who emulates you. So when we look at people in our society, there are many teachers, doctors, lawyers, bankers, business people,
welders,
you name them.
Fishermen.
Yeah.
You name all of them. I mean, not only those who I've mentioned, but as Pat brought to the fore.
And is it possible there could be a lot of role models who unfortunately don't support the correct political side at the time?
All that, we understand it's a whole...
Well, but your parents really should be your best role model. Should be.
That's the last word.
Always.
Edric W. Stanley, Conrad Nye Liebert, Ted Hobson, and Dr. Patricia Bartlett. On the first segment of the program, Pastor Wayne Maynard. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. You all have a wonderful evening.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.
With all the power from the tower, this is the Power